South Africa is on the brink of a major food shortage as the country grapples with escalating water interruptions and unforeseen power cuts. That's at least the word from experts. They have warned that the disruptions threaten the stability of food production and supply chains, potentially leading to widespread shortages and increased food insecurity. The persistent water interruptions are aggravated by aging infrastructure and drought conditions. This has severely impacted agricultural activities. Farmers are struggling to irrigate crops, leading to reduced yields and lower quality produce. The Agricultural Business Chamber has raised concerns about the long-term viability of farming under these conditions. It says that without reliable water sources, both crop and livestock farming face unprecedented challenges, endangering the country's food supply. Let's expand on this conversation. We're joined by corporate strategy and development specialist at Byl Roux, who joins us. Very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. A word of caution has been sent out to South Africa that the country is on the brink of a major food shortage. I mean, you're in the crop and livestock space. What are the big challenges as we hear this word of caution coming out about what the country is likely to face?
Good evening. Good evening to all the viewers. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I think one of the biggest challenges in the agri sector is access to clean and sustainable water sources. I think one of the challenges of the country that developed over time was the aging infrastructure and water that gets lost due to aging infrastructure. Furthermore, one of the negatives about that is most of the catchment areas that serves the water needs of urban areas also serves the needs of the agricultural industries and the irrigation farmers in that area. So due to the loss of water, and with South Africa being a water scarce country, it's an opportunity for the new government to reverse the aging infrastructure and to do proper budget allocations for infrastructure development and improvement. And that will ultimately, like I said, like the saying goes, water is life. So where there's water, there's life. And as much as animals and plants depend on water, humans also need it. And it's also very important for the well-being of society.
How then do we begin to measure the impact of the water and water cuts and shortages, as well as the power interruptions, as we look at the viability of the agricultural sector?
Yes, so that became quite a challenge with Eskom and load shedding or power scheduling from time to time. Especially the big irrigation systems in the country is very dependent on pumping stations moving water across areas, and this basically, some of these pumping stations didn't have sufficient capacity or auxiliary capacity to stay working during load shedding. Meaning that some of the best agriculture areas in South Africa were cut off from their main water supplies, and that resulted in further costs for the farmers, where they actually had to truck in water from faraway sources because the pipelines just stopped working. Certain industries are more sensitive to water, especially like livestock, and crops also to some extent. But at the end of the day, there's no alternative to water. You need clean, safe water on a sustainable basis if you want to produce good quality crop and livestock for human consumption.
You've touched a little bit on how farmers are navigating with these challenges, but when it comes to the real threat of food insecurity, how severe is that threat? And you speak about how you're hoping that the next cabinet officials, the ministers who occupy these positions, are able to think around some interventions that will stop what could potentially be catastrophic.
Yes, certainly. So, in South Africa, unfortunately, maybe a good example is that the forecast for this year's maize crop is less than last year. It was recently covered in the media. I think it's between 15 and 20% less, meaning that the price of maize will definitely go up in terms of economic principles. And with maize meal being a staple in South Africa, unfortunately, it will be the poorest of the poor that will feel it in their pockets, and ultimately will suffer the brunt of the smaller crops. So what the government can do is to support the agricultural industry, either through subsidies or soft loans or other types of incentives, and ultimately to look after the poor, because the poor doesn't have options. So like I mentioned, maize meal is a staple, and if the price goes up, then they unfortunately can't afford it and they can only buy less. And then another unintended consequence is that due to food insecurity and malnourishment is basically the impact on children or on the youth, which is actually the next generation. And by not looking after the current youth or the people under the age of 18, you're actually jeopardizing your future. So it's actually very important to ensure that food is available, it is accessible, and it is affordable. So that is the best investment government can make in the future.
And what has been the reaction from farmers in the sectors? Of course, looking at crop and livestock and the others, what is the reaction as they approach institutions of finance or perhaps government to try and get some sort of help? I mean, I would imagine that some of the short-term plans would involve, getting a borehole, solar panels, and all of those solutions that could help in the short term.
Yes. Getting access to external funding has been very challenging for all across the industry. Typically traditional banks view agriculture as very high risk, although there's a case for it being the perceived risk, but the real risk is not always in line with the perceived risk. Historically, farmers had access to the land bank. That's not available to them anymore. So getting access to funding for farmers is actually getting quite hard. There's a few private credit providers that has been focusing on the agricultural space. But then again, farmers need to pay a premium above prima when they borrow money from these entities. And so basically, if government can, maybe an easy win will be if government can get the land bank up and running again to make affordable funding available to the farming community. That will be a good start.
Very well. Thank you so much for that. Let's leave it there for now.